I would like to dedicate today's Shia to the Simcha of Moshe Kaplan, son of Moshe ben Yaakov, son of Moshe. Moshe is the son of Yaakov and Yehudis. Uh, the families have become synonymous, Kaplan, Tannenbaum families, with Osameach over the years. It began a few generations ago, of course, with Yaakov's grandfather, Zatzal Yosef Tannenbaum, and continuing. Moshe's bar mitzvah was supposed to be here in Osameach, and because of the COVID-19 situation, it got postponed. But Yitzhak Niten the Tashlumen. In a certain sense, there's the Shalom HaKodesh says that everything that happens during the week is connected to the parsha of that week. That there's a spiritual energy that is absorbed, given over to the world through the parsha and the seder of the kriya of the parshias. Of course, and then interpolated and integrated through the personal learning and davening of Klal Yisrael, the mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim. But Moshe, it's very interesting that, let's go with that shalom, that there's a connection between your bar mitzvah, the fact that it had to be postponed over here, not the bar mitzvah halachically, but the celebration couldn't be over here, it was delayed. Some Sefer writes, this week's parsha, that at his son's bar mitzvah, he said that I'm talking about Parshas Ve'echi, that some Sefer writes, asks Betzim, what's the first mitzvah a bar mitzvah boy can fulfill? And some people say Limud Torah, other people say Emunah, Bitochen. Of course, there's some degree of truth to it all. Limud Torah, Rebel Schwartzman Zatzal used to say. Some Sefer writes Simcha, to be in a state of Simcha. That's the first mitzvah that a bar mitzvah boy can fulfill. Perhaps, though not here, elsewhere, the Chassam Sefer does quote Rabbeinu Bachai, and Rabbeinu Bachai frequently on many questions and many interpretations. And Rabbeinu Bachai is the one who says on the mitzvah Tachas Shalavarata Hashem Anokecha V'Simcha V'Tov Levo. Rabbeinu Bachai says one of Taryag mitzvahs is to fulfill all the other mitzvahs with simcha. It would follow then that the day that somebody makes the transition, he transfers. He's no longer an Eino Mitzvah v'yos. He's no longer a volunteer in his fulfilling of mitzvahs as a cotton, as a minor, but now he's in the status of Godel, so then he's now going to be fulfilling mitzvahs. This would seem to be the appropriate time to make the declaration that he is now in a state of simcha to accept to be a mitzvah v'yosa, to be part of the drafted into the Ribbon Shloim's army of Klal Yisrael, fighting throughout the Deiros for Ruchnius, to transcend Gashmius, not deny it. We say in davening every morning, Al Tishlo Bona Yetzirah. The Yetzer Hara shouldn't govern us. It's governance we're talking about. Who controls? If the Yetzer Hara controls, we're in trouble. But not to be mevatel the Yetzer Hara. When the Anshe Knesset Agdela were mispalel to be mevatel the Yetzer Hara, things in the world stop pretty much. So there's a mitzvah to be besimcha. Moshe, these days, Reb Gershon Edelstein, you should be stark and gesund, Zoken Muflog, Lian Hora, Ad Esrim Plus, continue to giving shurim. And he keeps emphasizing when we get the messages from him that you have to be besimcha. He didn't refer to it, but Rabbi Kivega, during the Magefa, the plague in his time, emphasized the necessity to be besimcha. When a man is in a state of joy, then he performs differently. Biologically, chemically, there's a different metzias, there's a different actuality to to the reality of that person if he's in a state of simcha or if he's chas v'shalom not. So there would seem to be a connection which I would like to extend, that going with the chidah, not accidental, where we're holding and where we're up to. And when I was your age, Moshe, a little less than a century ago, the Gregorian New Year's, the people congested, rushed, piled into Times Square to watch the ball slide down the rod and to declare Happy New Year. Happy New Year was a moment of significance, of drama, of joy for that tzibur. I remember that in the last years that Chaim Berlin that I was attending was in the Brownsville section. There was one catering establishment that was also a remnant residually from the time that there had been a Jewish population there, and they had rented out the facility. Now there are no Jews left there for a New Year's Eve party. And local residents, that was their celebration, those who didn't make it to Times Square. And one of my friends, Nachum, he was commissioned to shut the lights downstairs on the ground floor, and upstairs on the 5th floor there were 2 halls, and everybody would scream Happy New Year. He had a problem, is that the elevator was broken, the proprietor wasn't about to invest in fixing it, and it was impossible in the normal circumstances without the crowds there, where the lights were placed downstairs in a cloakroom behind the kitchen and the upstairs, and to get 5 flights, and with the crowds, it would be impossible to be in both places exactly at 12. He was earning something like 35 cents an hour, and just didn't seem worth it to him to subcontract one of the halls. So he came to me and he asked me, what do I do? I told him, listen, Nachum, go when the people start their partying, all the frivolity and mindless noise and celebrating, then you go upstairs to the upstairs hall and turn the clock back 5 minutes every hour, and start right early enough at 8, and then you'll have ample time to make it The clock upstairs won't get to 12 until you can actually make it there. You start downstairs, go upstairs. It worked like a charm. But afterwards, Nachum came to me and he said to me, he has pangs of conscience that he duped these people. They think they ushered in 1951 at the right moment. Uh, as I've told many of you in the past, I remember that it was 51 because we didn't know, but later that year was supposed to be the Branca Bobby Thompson debacle. Okay, so it worked, and I told Nachum, there's no problem, because if time is merely a state of mind, it's not an actuality, it's not a metzius, it's not a concrete, tangible, empirical reality in the Bria, then the Jew holds time is a creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's an absolute reality to time. And there's a Kedusha. When I pass from Erev Shabbos to Shabbos, I need a visa. I'm entering a new halachic domain, a new jurisdictional realm. If it's all arbitrary, that doesn't work. Now let's talk a little bit about Simcha and this week's Parsha. The Yaakov says to Yosef that he's going to bless them, and he says, "Amalach hagolosi mikol ro yivorech es laom." He should bless the youth. V'yikor behem shmi v'shem avosai Avram Yitzchak v'yidgu lerov bekerev oros, and they shall multiply like fish in the land. Again, it's the Chassam Sefer that points out that there's an anomaly there because fish don't multiply in the land. So most read it that as fish multiply in the water, so they should multiply in the land. Some says no. Some Sefer says no. Some Sefer says that is the message. Even when fish are not in their natural habitat, they should have a blessing to survive, to transcend the normal limitations of the material world and physical creation. The Jew in Golos is like a fish on land, and nevertheless, he should have the bracha to survive, to thrive within those circumstances. Waiting urgently to get back, yes, but meanwhile, doing the hishtadlus, taking the expiation, the kapora, and interpolating that, merging that in to the context of the text of his life. That's the challenge. And that only that way can there be the simcha that we're reaching for. Vayidgu lerov bekerev ha'oretz. I remember that there were years that I cultivated an aquarium as a bacha, and in the early years of the marriage, the flows habay, the beauty of the shapes, the colors of the fish was a never-ending source of fascination. Children liked it too, but eventually I did not succeed in getting them to take over dealing with it and taking care of it. So eventually those fish made their way to the lobby in Osameach. But if you have an aquarium, you note that if all the fish are swimming at the top of the tank or all the fish are swimming at the bottom of the tank, then there's a problem in the tank. either a some kind of a lack germ has gotten in, some bacteria has gotten in that is attacking the fish, or there's a lack of oxygen if they're all at the bottom or all at the top. A healthy tank is when they're swimming at every level. Now, the medrash there on the spot, the medrash here on the spot, v'yidgalo v'karvoros, says Talmidei Chachomim b'nei Torah are like fish. Fish are in the ocean, or in the river, and when the rain hits the top, the surface of the water, the rain, they shoot up to the top to catch every new drop. That is they can't be denied another Torah idea insight. So one would then find it legitimate to extend that the aquarium should be like a Beis Medrash should be like an aquarium. That a healthy Beis Medrash is when they're swimming at every level. Advanced, middle level, beginners. When they're swimming at all levels, then it's a healthy tank. And of course, there's the peculiar phenomenon that as things freeze, they constrict. The exception is the surface of the lakes and the rivers, that somehow the ice expands and forms a cover, a shield, so that the water in the river protects the fish from being frozen. Somehow fitting very much to Vayidgal Erov, the special hashgocha that will be for Klal Yisrael in history. Let's go a little further in the parsha. Yaakov says that I have given you one, v'ani nosati lechem shchem ech achad al achecha. He's telling Yosef, I'm giving you one additional portion, one additional lot in this land, because there's an extra tribe now. There are going to be 13 tribes. Asher lokachti miyad Amori b'chalbi b'chashdi, that I took from the Amori with my sword and my bow. The Targum over here says b'tzalusi u'ba'usi, with my prayer. Two kinds of prayer. Tzalusi is the required prayer, fixed prayer, and ba'usi is the innovative prayer that somebody introduces. Both the Brisker Rov and the Meshech Chochmah focused on the analogy between Charbi, the sword, as being comparable to the fixed prayer, because the sword is steel, it's sharp, it needs a minimal amount of effort, whereas the kashti, the bow, needs a lot of investment of effort and energy to make it work, to execute the shooting of the arrow. The fixed prayer, says Rameh Simcha, when you daven with a tzibur and the nusach of the tzibur, then in fact you are catching a part of that energy, and therefore even with minimal kavona, even with minimal intent and devotion, your prayer has some dimension of significance. It does work. You just need in Ovois to be mechaber. It's not the preferred condition, obviously, but the it does work when you're inserting a private prayer. It's like the keshet, like the bow. It needs tremendous insertion, investment of kavana. The Brisker Rav emphasizes more, bringing the Gemara in Baba Basra, that if somebody lo aleinu has a chayla in his house, he should go to a chochem. It needs a special kind of a prayer when it's the prayer of a yochid for a yochid, and that needs another dimension of investment. That's more like the bow, as opposed to the cherev. So now the Klal Yisrael are preparing their Shechem Echad, that there's an additional portion given. There are really going to be now 13 tribes, though Ephraim and Manasseh are subsumed under Yosef, but there are 13 tribes. It's very interesting. I would submit another dimension to the significance of the number 13 as being symbolic. Some of us likely touched on this in the past, but let's revisit. And for those who haven't yet participated, let's visit. We have in Sifrei Chassidus, the Rishna, and others talk about the idea that there's a parallel between the Yud Gimel Midas of Rabbi Yishmael, the 13 hermeneutic principles of how we extrapolate the Lord from the text of how the Mishnah works, right? Kal v'chema and Binyanav, Klal u'Pratu Klal, v'chulu v'chulu v'chulu. 13 principles. And there are also 13 principles of Rachamim, of mercy, that the Ribbono Shel Olam has given to the world. It's quoted in the name of the Rishna and other Gedolei Chassidus, this parallel, that the last of the Yud Gimel Midas of Rabbi Yishmael is Shnei Ksuvim v'Makchishim Zeh Zeh, two psukim that contradict each other. Ad sheyovo kosav shlishi, till the third pasuk comes and reconciles the apparent contradiction. Last of the Yud Gimel Midas of Rabbi Yishmael is Nake Lo Yanake. Be cleansed of the transgression, not be cleansed. Chazal come along and reconcile the apparent contradiction and say that with tshuva or without tshuva. With tshuva, then there's a resolution. So there's a parallel again, that the last of the 13 midas is talking about contradictions, paradoxes. Says the Rishna, it's a prediction, a projection for generations that Ikvus the Mashiach, the time of Mashiach, the Messianic era, we're going to be living with apparent, abounding contradictions. COVID-19, vaccine. People excelling with chesed, with outdistancing themselves. People, lo aleinu, failing to live up to their obligations. Mixture. It's somehow paradoxes. And like Reb Gershon said, we need simcha. Like Rabbi Akiva said, we need the simcha in order to perform on the highest level. And this is the moment for working on the simcha. There's the Ramah, Shuva 450 years ago, Shuvas Ramah, it's his Loshen, Ein Simcha Kiatos Osvekis. There's no simcha like the resolution of sfekas, of doubts. When you're confronted with contradictions, you have to be in a state of doubt. The Metsudis says, that was a few hundred years later, but I'm assuming that he came to this pshat on his own, since he doesn't quote anybody else. The Metsudis in Mishlei on Tes Zayin Lamed Ma'or Einayim Isamach Lev, the light of the eyes gives simcha to the heart. Shmua Tova Tadash Enotzim. And a good piece of news, something positive, uh, increases our physical well-being. Loshen of the Metzudas is Me'or Einayim, Ha'oras Einayim, when we have clarity, like day. But Dova HaMasupak, something that we were not clear about. I go with the Yetzer Hara, or I go with my Yetzer Tov. Yisamach Lev, Ki ein ba'olam simcha ki hatoras hasveikas. There's nothing in the world that brings more simcha than hatoras hasveikas. Today, the Hashgacha had it. The Bar Mitzvah was supposed to take place in Osamer Yerushalayim. For obvious reasons, that has been delayed and postponed. But as per the Shaloh HaKodesh, Moshe, Yaakov, all the Kaplans, Klal Yisrael, it is amazing that the gate of words arrived today. We'll post a picture, B'li Neda and Yetzer Hashem, of that. Today. That gate of words is quoting Rameir Simcha in the Parshas Techocha. He says that Gemara in Brachas teaches, Ben Zoma says that he wakes up in the morning and he finds himself elated that when he compares himself to Adam Arishon after the Chet, Adam Arishon had to tend to all of his own needs. After the Chet, before the Chet, everything was taken care of in Gan Eden. Post Chet, he didn't have a mechanic, right? He didn't have a dry cleaner, he didn't have a supermarket, he had to take care of everything himself. He had to spend time learning those crafts. I wake up in the morning, says Ben Zoma, I have to have, okay, I need to be financed, but I don't have to spend time, the most precious commodity. I don't have to spend time learning all those crafts. That's the Gemara. Says Rameir Simcha, imagine being born into a world where there had not been an Avram, a Yitzchak, a Yaakov, a Yosef, a Moshe Rabbeinu, a Maimed Har Sinai, Nevi'im Rishonim, Nevi'im Achronim, Anshe Knesses HaGedela, Tanoim, Amoraim. Should have been said it, Rabbanim Sabaroim, Achreinim. How would I find the way myself? So if Ben Zoma was besimcha that the material universe was organized and put into place for him, then it's a kal v'choma ben beno shel kal v'choma, says Rameh Simcha, that we have to be besimcha, that we've been given the plan for what the universe, what creation, what history, what our place is, what it's all about, and how we fit in. Do we always have all the answers at any given time? No. But we have enough answers, as we have often said, in the mercantile metaphysic, that the Ribboni Shalom has Kavayochel paid enough cash in history that when he asks for credit, we give the credit. And we put it in context. Continues Rameh Simcha, that if you meet somebody and he is not besimcha, then he doesn't appreciate this axiomatic root truth that the Jew ascribes to, subscribes to, lives with. And somebody who has this simcha, ein dover be'olam hanifsad v'ha'over, there's nothing in this transitory world that can shake him, that can unroot him. The wall, the gate of words that today arrived is this text. It's a magnificent work of art, but it's also a gate to the beauty, the power, the drama of being a Jew at this point in time and having the opportunity to take the resources, put it at our disposal, and enter into the Beis Medrash to learn another level and another depth, to find my peace and my place in the context of it all. Hashem Yitain that the Moshe, you should have the bar mitzvah should be with all the complexity, besimcha. All the bar mitzvah boys in Klal Yisrael should have the internalization that, as your grandfather Bob Kaplan, Zichron Livracha, used to frequently quote the philosopher Herman Cohn, who often said that for every complex problem, there's a simple solution, and it's usually wrong. Oversimplification is the bane of the people who are reluctant to invest Odom, to come to terms with Odom la'omol yula. The man was created to toil. He was born to toil. And that toil brings simcha, because then I'm carving my space, my peace in history, a continuity, a vindication of everything that the Messiah and my generations, previous generations have invested to get me to this point, and to be able to go further. Ki Dativ, the Arizal, confided, we're told by Ramesha Kodavir, I believe, that all of his achievements off the charts were because he was besimcha in what he did. Simcha means to incorporate the challenges, the sveikas, the lack of clarity at times, and to recognize that we have the resources, that what I'm not going to be able to answer, then Chavrusa can answer, our Talmidim can answer, our families will answer, but we will have already answered enough and gained enough credibility that Hashem Yiten, that the simcha should carry us through. Yeshuas u'refuas metoich simcha v'hatzlocha u'brocha and mazel tov l'kulam.